Welcome to In the Room with Communitas North America. It's a time when we invite you to enter our world for a brief conversation and hear more about what we are passionate about as a missional and microchurch network. We also hope that these conversations will inspire you to think about new ways of being the church in North America. I am Leon Longard, the team lead for Communitas North America. My co-host in these conversations is James Kola. So grab yourself a favorite beverage, have a seat, and join us around the table. Hey everybody, welcome. This is a little bit different episode. We are actually recording this in advance and not doing this as a live episode because our guest's schedule, he usually has something going on during the time that we're doing the Facebook Lives. But we thought what he does, what he's doing in Spokane was so important. We were like, we need to get this interview in there. And also, I mean, it just fits well within the concept of what we're talking about with the Church Beautiful in these episodes. Also, you will notice that James is not here with us today. He is his other job. He manages a coffee shop, and right now it's about 8:15 in the morning where he's at, and so coffee shops are pretty busy right then. He's pretty busy right about now. So anyway, we have with us today Johnny Edmundson, who is in, as I mentioned, Spokane. In a minute, I'll probably have him tell a little bit more of his story, kind of his background, his connection to Communitas. He's a friend of Communitas. I actually had an opportunity to sit down with Johnny and one of his interns back in June when I was in Spokane. But Johnny, we've been doing this series on talking with people about things they're doing that just kind of manifest what we consider the church beautiful. And it's a phrase that we're starting to build around in North America, describing Communitas, our goal in Communitas North America. When you think of a phrase like, or the concept of something like the church beautiful, what image comes to your mind?
Yeah, thanks, Leon. One image / concept that I think about a lot that keeps rising to my mind as you mentioned that is mutually seeking the shalom of the whole community of creation. That's a phrase that I borrow from Dr. Randy Woodley, but really thinking about all of creation as being related to each other and loved by our common creator. And so seeking that deep shalom for every member of the environment, not just all people, but joining Jesus in reconciling all things to himself.
Wow, that's good. It's good. It kind of draws on, I know you're like, for the longest time, like even back in my college days, I did my paper on environmentalism and faith and the whole stewardship concept. I think it kind of draws from that whole, how do we better take care of the world around us? And the expression of how faith should motivate that. So I appreciate that a lot too. So maybe tell us a little bit of your story. What you're up to, maybe a little bit of how you've kind of gotten into the friends circle of Communitas and things like that.
Yeah, sure. So back around like 2015, I sensed a call to explore church planting. And at the time, I didn't really know what I was doing or what I was getting into, which was maybe a good thing. Just sensed that the church needed to start trying new things, and I wanted to be part of that. For a long time now, I've recognized that I love starting new things, but that was more like small tweaks or programs here and there. And I felt led to try something closer to brand new. You know, everything we're doing has been done before, but maybe not in the same way. So as I was engaging in that journey, I was part of a few different learning cohorts. And I think it was initially through Russ Davis with New Community Church that I heard about Communitas, but also through Jeff Reinhardt. We were in the MA in Theology program at Whitworth together. And so as he got more engaged with Communitas, that was a pretty natural connection. So I enjoyed doing some training stuff with Communitas, and did sort of like an onboarding program. And then also separately with Russ and Jeff, did this other kind of like startup experience for folks that wanted to do a business that was really ethically minded. But I was also thinking about being very ministry minded in that context. And I think maybe the only one in the room who's thinking about how can we start a thing that's kind of businessy or nonprofity, but also really focused on planting fresh expressions of the church. So that's kind of, where my Communitas connection came from. And that's been an ongoing, beautiful relationship. So thank you, Leon, for this opportunity. And even though we haven't been like, fully working together all the time, our relationship has really been a support to me and an encouragement to me. And I'm excited to see ways that can continue to happen.
Right. And you're also working, I mean, you are ordained with a denominational expression of church as well, too. So you kind of walk in both worlds a little bit.
Yeah.
And you're leading a project there. Kind of tell us about, it's called Growing Neighbors. Tell us a little bit about what Growing Neighbors is about.
Yeah. So Growing Neighbors, our like little tagline is helping neighbors grow and share healthy food and relationships. So our focus really is on building healthy relationships. And when we say that, we're thinking about primarily three relationships: one, between people; two, between people and every other member of the environment; and then three, between people and our common creator. So even though a lot of the people that are like our full participants and or volunteers are not believers or Jesus followers, we see ways in which the Spirit is at work in those relationships, and we're just offering opportunities for the gospel to be planted and grow in the hearts of those who are involved. So like seeking that relationship with our Creator is never like a forced thing, but kind of a fun, organic piece of what we're seeking to grow and cultivate. So yeah, we talk about cultivating an environment where fresh expressions of the church can grow more easily or fruitfully. So we're not necessarily trying to plant a church or a ministry or a missional community, but really we're working with all sorts of neighbors in all sorts of neighborhoods, and just seeing what God does with that along the way. So community gardening, or like food, is the primary means to the end of relationships with everything that we do. So community gardening is the central program. We've helped to start over 70 different growing spaces, and inviting and equipping people who live, learn, work, play, or pray near each other to tend these gardens together and do it in a way that's really loving to the land and, compassionate to all of creation. And then we've built all these other programs around the community garden to kind of support that community, but also get food to people who need it and do it in a way that's really generous and hospitable. So we're serving a free meal every Tuesday night, which is kind of a central gathering space for our community. We're delivering food, often via bicycle, to try to keep it more sustainable. We're developing community composting systems and working with lots of local partners on these programs too. That's a big part of our heart. We're setting up little free pantries so people can get food 24/7 and or share food 24/7 from these public spaces. We're also taking food to farmers markets. We're doing cooking and food preservation education. So lots of different ways that we're inviting the community to care for each other, primarily through food.
I'm just thinking of kind of a as you were bringing this up, I'm thinking of a parallel to even, when Jesus told the parable of the sower scattering the seed. And I
Mm.
just think about how, when you talk about what the different things that Growing Neighbors are doing, and then you bring in the component of the hope is connection with Creator in the end, or that's the opportunity for people to connect with our common Creator. I just think of that, how just that those community gardens and the pantries and everything like that become part of that whole soil preparation process in people's lives.
Yeah.
And I think it's critical. I mean, when we talk about hunger and in America, and we talk about healthy food in
Hmm.
America compared to a lot of the processed stuff that we see going, people
Hmm.
consuming and getting, there's just so many ways. It's just a holistic reconnection with the Garden of Eden in some ways, I would
Yeah.
say. So it's
Yeah.
really interesting.
Early days, we were, just dreaming. I mean, often me just bouncing ideas off of different trusted mentors and community members about what could the church really do that would
Hmm.
make some sense in this cultural context, in this place, at this time. And so we
Hmm.
landed in this really practical place of like, what does everyone really need, and uh, our food, noticing how backward our food system is in
Hmm.
large ways, how often like 90+% of the food we're eating is imported from somewhere else, and there's all sorts of waste and unnecessary
Hmm.
resource usage in that transportation process. And so just,
Yeah.
yeah, feeding people and meeting that very practical need of offering healthy, local, nutritious, organic food uh,
Hmm.
just kept rising to the top, and the community was asking for it. So,
Right.
yeah.
Cool. So, I think probably just touched on it a little bit, but maybe go into a little bit more. What led you to start this, Growing Neighbors?
Yeah, so I love talking in terms of there was a lot of me in the beginning, but lots of people around me that helped inspire this. And ultimately, I trust and believe the Holy Spirit was inspiring this. But basically, I kept doing a bunch of like listening interviews, meeting with folks in the community, inside and outside of the church, who had something to do with reducing waste, growing food, or just trying new creative ways of being the church. And so, in that process of 6 to 12 months, these different ideas kept sort of coming together, noticing how disconnected a lot of our community was, and um, how food is one thing that often connects people, and how a lot of people don't have access to enough healthy, nutritious food. And just some of these concepts kept rising to the top. And we asked a lot of different community members, like, hey, do you think it'd be best if we just like team up with what you're doing, or better if we start this new thing? And in the end, most people were just saying, yeah, we think we need this. So
Mm-hmm.
that felt like a really good confirmation. But at the same time, we didn't really know what we were doing. We're like, okay, we're going to start this new thing, but we're not really sure what's going to happen, which ultimately is, I think, what the church needs to be doing, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
we don't necessarily know the way forward, but we know something different has to happen, and let's try some stuff and
Mm-hmm.
see where that
Mm-hmm.
goes. So we've been working it since 2016 officially, but I still think about uh, keeping it really open-handed, like keeping it sort of as this adaptable experiment,
Mm-hmm.
which sometimes drives my staff and volunteers crazy. But uh, yeah, trying to make it like as tangible and organized as possible, but also still sort of building the plane while we fly it.
Yeah, that can be a great analogy for a lot of what I think anybody doing anything missional um, experiences. It's like we're learning as we go, and we
Yeah.
adapt to it. Yeah. So I think it's really, I mean, I appreciate the way you talk about how you listen to the community. You did a lot of the good, what we talk about when we talk about like embedding in a community and getting to know the needs and stuff. You really dig into that, and you just found a practical need that is creating something beautiful for your community. How has this practice of doing these gardens, the little pantries, and all the other things that are going into growing neighbors, how have these practices affected your relationship with the community?
Yeah, I mean, that's my favorite part about what we're doing is it's really equipping localized groups to take the mission and vision and values and run with it.
Mm,
And so we're always looking at new partnerships to grow with, individuals on up to larger community partner organizations who are both local and regional. um, and just saying, how can we, where do we have mission overlap at all?
right.
And what would make sense for us to do if we leaned into that a little bit?
Mm,
Uh, or how can we equip you to do what you do a little more lovingly, a little more thoughtful about all of creation, a little more thoughtful about how it affects your local neighbors or how it could build healthier community. And so there's, dozens and dozens of different partners that we're working with in different ways. And some of those partnerships stick more long term. Some are more short lived or like lead to a new connection. And my favorite part about that is often the ones that seem maybe not as important or not as crucial or strong will lead to opportunities that are just unexpectedly awesome.
mm,
So I feel like the Spirit keeps doing that, surprising us. And often when we feel drained or discouraged, something new will happen that we couldn't have planned or imagined.
mm,
And that will just make it feel worthwhile,
right.
So we're just kind of always starting these new relationships and seeing where they lead. And so it's very grassrootsy, organic community connection.
Mm,
And some of those connections sort of require more energy from our core members to maintain. And some people are sort of come to us and like beg to get involved and just take it and run with it. So those relationships with the community look very different at different times. Yeah, I
mm.
mean, I can keep talking about that for days, but does that resonate?
I mean, let's now let go on for a bit. I mean, this is definitely good. I mean,
So, like, one thing I'm super pumped about, there's a lot of awesome connections happening, but we recently started a garden just south of a high school in town, um, which was fun and great. And we're working with the neighborhood council and local master gardeners, and there was already a few different groups involved. And we realized, just kind of tucked in down around the corner, a couple blocks away, there was this native language learning school,
oh,
the Sailor School of Spokane. And they're doing such awesome work, but super busy doing it, right? So, like, I've been sort of knocking on the door for a couple of years, trying to introduce myself and met a few folks, but never really connected well, So I'm starting to sort of lose hope, like, yeah, maybe they're not interested or they're too busy, or we'll see where this goes. But I've really been developing this love and passion for listening to and learning from Indigenous peoples in relation to like all sorts of desired acts of reconciliation and land back and learning and re-indigenization and decolonization. And
mm-hmm.
anyways, I just think we have a ton to learn from Native communities.
Right.
So I didn't want to give up, So finally, I got a chance to sit down with their principal. He got a chance to really kind of hear my heart and hear some of the stuff we'd been doing and I got a chance to get to know him and build some trust. And it's just been so fun to see how that relationship has grown. They've now had students come and visit this garden lots of different times. We planted some native edible plants with them on their campus.
Mm,
And now we're dreaming with them about much larger plantings and bigger plots
cool.
as a way to care for their native families, but also to educate local people on foods that like have loved growing here for thousands of years and how to tend them, and just really try to remember kind of how to care well for the land in this place, and to do that together, and to learn the native language together. And yeah, so we already have lots of beautiful plans of upcoming opportunities, but it's been really fun to see that relationship that sort of seemed like a dead end to really be blossoming.
Cool. That is really, I mean, personally for me, to hear that type of a thing is really encouraging, because I think same thing, connection with Indigenous people and developing, learning from Indigenous communities is really critical. Where we are in Minnesota, there's two strong movements between the Ojibwe and the Dakota of people that are trying to preserve the history of what this land was about before. And many of us that are finally like figuring out, yeah, we need to listen to these lessons. So it's really cool. That's really cool. Yeah. How is this affecting people who are part of Growing Neighbors?
Yeah, so I'm continuing to try to learn how to respond to questions like this, but we want to keep our membranes really porous, like our boundaries really easy to cross, and sort of intentionally messy. It's like Leon, you, I feel like, are now enough part of the family that I would love to consider you part of Growing Neighbors. Like, the last thing I want is to create another opportunity for like an us and them situation.
Yeah.
So as much as possible, as people kind of draw near to our practices and programs and activities, I want them to feel like they are Growing Neighbors. Like they have now become us. And so they don't need me or you or anyone else to be with them or be counseling them for them to move forward, being and doing Growing Neighbors. So I have a long way to go with like communicating that well to people, but that's really our desire, not necessarily to like make our name great or get it all out there, but for them to really like understand and embrace our values, our practices, incorporate them into their lives and their businesses and their churches and wherever they're connected, their schools. So I don't remember your initial question, but like,
well, I was just like, how is it affecting the people involved?
Yeah. So the people involved, I think about like anyone and everyone who's like sort of touched it, right?
Right.
And so a lot of them are bringing it other places, with or without my knowledge or permission, which is like the dream, Anne was telling me the story. She's been getting more involved with us, and she was like, I was talking to a friend who lives on the west side of the state and said, hey, it seems like you have some similar interest to what we're doing here. Maybe you should try some Growing Neighbors like stuff in your part of the world. And now they are, and they're reaching out to connect and brainstorm. And
cool.
So even though there's part of me that is like, man, wouldn't it be cool if there was like a Growing Neighbors chapter in every part of the world in 10 years or something. But I'd much rather see people just be inspired to do good things, join in work the Spirit is doing in their place.
Right.
So that's the stuff that gets me excited.
That's cool. That's cool. And I remember when I met with you, you have some students that like one of your interns was with us when we had lunch that day. You have interns that are involved in what you're doing from time to time.
Yeah. And they come and go with their different semesters and programs and such, which interns are like, super fun to have around, but it's also super hard when you invest in them and then
Right.
they leave the nest so
Yeah.
too soon. Come back, my children.
Oh, I get that. I get that, particularly if they're
Anyways,
doing like those summer internships from like,
yeah.
you just got started.
Yeah. So it's great though. There are several schools in town we've worked with, and we're adding to that list, which is exciting. So Whitworth is a school I went to in Spokane. That's what brought me here. We've had a really strong connection there. Just had like 40 students out the other day as part of their community building day activity.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting more connected with Gonzaga. I just recently spoke with an entrepreneurship class there, and my friend Jenny is teaching, and just building more connections there has been super fun lately. We've had folks from Eastern Washington University, local community colleges. One that I'm really excited about right now is WSU Spokane, or Washington State University. They have a campus in Spokane, and
Mm-hmm.
we had our first intern with them this past year.
Cool.
And she was just awesome. Like, she's studying like health, nutrition, dietetics, and was really interested in kind of seeing it from like the ground up, literally, like thinking of nutrition more broadly, and from the soil to the plate to the person, the whole process.
Cool. Yeah.
So we have another potential intern through them for this summer, and also maybe working with like a whole class of capstone students. So I mentioned earlier, like, how we're trying to like share the love and the mission and the values. So I'm also on staff with Shado Park Presbyterian Church,
Right.
part-time as family ministries director, part-time as growing neighbors director. But we have like this sort of hub in the Shadle neighborhood, or like northwest part of Spokane. And so part of the dream is to help make hubs in other neighborhoods. So less of what we do is kind of flowing through our centralized hub. We keep decentralizing and empowering other local groups or neighbors to really take it and run with it in their space. So one idea with this WSU Spokane capstone group is to have them help us target like one new neighborhood and to help develop a hub group in that space. So yeah, I'm excited to see how that could play out.
That does sound cool. Sounds good. That kind of touches on some of the hopes. What are some of the other hopes maybe you have for the future of growing neighbors?
Yeah, so like I said, with the experimentalness of it, I've been operating like it's a startup for like 7 years, which has been awesome and fun in a lot of ways, but also really tiring and hard in a lot of ways too. And I still feel like we're learning a lot as we go. So I want to stay adaptable, but also appropriately become semi-systematized in the ways that we can, in the ways that will actually support what we're doing and not sort of bog us down. I forget all the stages, but in some of my coursework in the past, you think about, there's this new movement, and then it sort of peaks and then becomes a monument,
Yeah.
Just, you can see that in like other cyclical, the life of the organization or an idea or whatever. So I really want to keep it flexible, adaptable, evolving to the context and the assets and needs of the community. But yeah, sort of to grow deeper roots into like the stuff that we've been noticing has been more impactful processes that will help us do what we do more effectively, more efficiently, and like not be spread too thin, I guess, to limit ourselves at times. Like I've, a wife and 2 kids too, and I'm always just running around. So trying to make sure I'm really caring well for my family.
Right. Yeah.
and my local neighbors and my church family, and not just trying to spread this out everywhere
Mhm.
and be spread too thin. So
Right. Right.
there's a lot of beautiful, you know, partnerships and movement and opportunities, and that stuff I really enjoy, but sometimes enjoy to a fault. So I'm trying to
Yeah.
manage that well and think more strategically about how to how to set us up to thrive, you know, and um, create sane expectations.
Cool. That's good. That's
Yeah.
good. I mean, this is really for me. I mean, just exciting to hear. Like I said, care for the environment, care for our created world. It's been something on my radar since college days,
Mm,
um, and we just even with our own um, new house, new yard that we have going here in Minnesota. We're trying to think, how do we create space for healthy food production,
yeah.
healthy connection with our community, inviting neighbors to say, hey, come pick from our garden because we don't eat it all, type of
Yeah.
thing. So how do we share what we have? So I think
Hmm.
a lot of your principles really are valuable to people around um, the country
Hmm.
too. So it's great to know about. How can they find out more about growing neighbors?
Yeah.
If someone's
So,
interested in knowing about it more.
right. You guys can find us on Instagram or Facebook at Growing Neighbors. Our website is growingneighbors.org or
Mhm.
.com for that matter.
Okay.
But yeah, happy to have folks find me through you as well, you know, via
Cool.
my email or phone or whatever. But we're always, you know, open to a dreaming sesh or an opportunity to help you, uh, anyone who's listening, to
Mhm.
think about how to be a more intentional, loving neighbor in your context, and or to join us in what we're doing around here.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, thank you for the time, Johnny. And I will say, James said hello. He was in that cohort with you, and so he kind of was like,
Yeah.
"Oh man, I'm gonna miss talking to Johnny."
Yeah.
But anyway, we will. Um, this one, obviously, as I said, is a pre-recorded program, but we'll be back in 2 weeks on November 14th with Dudley Callison talking about something a little different he's doing. He is running a co-work space outside of Denver, Colorado. It's had kind of a good overlap with mission in his community. And so, how that can be creating these spaces can be a good expression of the church. Beautiful. Um, Also, as always, if you have any comments, questions, things like that, feel free to drop them in the comments sections below, and we can see how we can get that information or get an answer to those questions back to you. So, thank you again, everybody. Thank you, Johnny,
Yeah.
and everybody.